Hi, welcome to another edition of NJSBA's Education Matters. I'm Ray Pinney. I'll be your host today. I have with me Kristen Johnson, who I'll introduce in a second. She's the Middlesex County Teacher of the Year. If you have any questions in the chat room, in the Facebook, you can put it in the chat room, or you can just put your comments in there and we'll try to get it to Kristen. Kristen is a middle school social studies teacher in the District of Carteret. You're last year's Middlesex County Teacher of the Year. Welcome.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. One of the things I love about my job is I get to meet a lot of the county teachers of the year, and it's always very inspirational to meet all those great teachers. And we'll talk about that because I know you got to do the same thing.
It was amazing.
One of the things that I was taken with was your background. I know a lot of teachers of the year, and when they talk about their history, they're like, oh, when I was in second grade, I put all my dolls up and I was teaching them. So they had this wonderful K-8, K-12 experience. You didn't really have the same experience as some of those teachers. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I had, through this experience, I've actually really heard everyone's stories as well with the other county teachers of the year. And it was very similar to that. They were all telling me these amazing stories. And for myself, I'm definitely a lifelong learner, and I love that aspect. And I had a really good education. But unfortunately, my K-12 experiences, they had a lot of conflict and bullying that kind of came up. And it definitely shaped who I was as a person and who I am as a person, and also who I am as a teacher. And anyone who knows me today, they always say, they're like, oh, you're so all about climate and culture. And that's really because of this experience. And some of the experiences that I went through, we have to remember that I went to school in Long Island, and it was the late 90s, early 2000s. So we weren't really having conversations about social emotional learning. We weren't really having those conversations about anti-bullying the way that we are today. So I think we have to put that context in on it as well, because when I speak about this, I think a lot of people out there, if they were someone who maybe bullied me, they might say, oh my gosh, Miss J, is she going to call me out? No, it's really a learning experience, and it's a reflective experience of how we can do better. But unfortunately, I have some really vivid memories of some really hard experiences, and some of them were waking up in the morning, about to go to track practice, and I have all of these missed phone messages, a minute or more longer, from a group of girls at a sleepover. And they are just ripping me apart for over a minute, each voice message. And then I have to get up and go to track practice with those, messages on my brain. When I was in sixth grade, I had won the DARE. It's a anti-drug.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's not really a thing anymore. I had won the essay contest, and I'm sitting in the auditorium, and I have to read my essay. I'm a sixth grader. That's already enough pressure. And one of the girls who had constantly said comments to me, she's sitting a couple seats away from me, and she is just every 5 seconds right before I go up, why are there bungees on your shoes? Why do you have tissues? I was sick on top of it. And she's just constantly going and going and going. And I actually stood up for myself on that one. And I had, said something, I used some foul language and told her to stop. And I get done with my essay, and my teacher pulls me into the hallway, and I was in trouble. The girl had told on me and had twisted everything around, and then I was in trouble after, days and weeks of dealing with this, and then dealing with it in front of parents and other people as well. And then it ended up getting turned on me.
So why did you go into teaching? Because I remember I saw the first time I saw you, teaching has a lot of those, you can observe little bullying things. Whether you
Absolutely.
might have the cafeteria duty.
Yep.
So you must have thought about those things. So what did you think of, and why did you still decide to go into teaching?
I'll be honest, I was really hesitant about it. I definitely had a lot of amazing experiences helping my athletes. I was a coach throughout my athletic career. I was always coaching on the side, and I loved that I got to help build athletes' confidence and that light bulb moment when they get a skill right. So I wanted to go into teaching because of that. But I had a hard time justifying to myself how I was going to supervise a lunchroom, for example, because when I think about lunchrooms, I think about the time that a bunch of students repeatedly stood up behind me and they recited the Pledge of Allegiance because I was wearing a red, white, and blue shirt to school. Now, what those students didn't know is my mom had bought that shirt at a thrift store. So some of my experiences are really the background of it is that I felt very misunderstood. I felt almost like someone else was writing my story for me. They were defining who I was as a person. And I didn't have a voice to own my own narrative of my own story. And that was happening whether I was thinking about taking kids on a field trip and having to supervise the bus. Well, I was the kid who came home covered in bus tape. So all of these experiences, they were defining me. And really, the work and the mission that I'm on today and why I went into teaching is because I want for my students, my athletes, and my colleagues to feel like they can own their narrative, own their story, and feel seen and heard.
Okay, so I'm fascinated by your life story. I'll wait for the book to come out to see.
Oh man, that's a big ask.
So you're teaching now, and I got the sense that you take that background and you see all your students, and you see the culture. That's why social emotional learning and the culture is probably more meaningful to you because it's almost personal.
Absolutely. Um, when I think back on my experiences, and I'm sure there's students out there, or maybe even people who are watching the podcast right now, who are thinking, I really wish an adult had stepped in and had made the bullying stop. And I agree with that. And I did have that sixth grade teacher actually wrote in my yearbook, I wish you would have come to me sooner after we got everything sorted out. Um, but as I reflect now after being in education, I really realized I needed a cultural shift school wide. I needed educators who were going to teach about emotional intelligence and encourage my peers to be emotionally intelligent. And also that we are celebrating those things that make us unique and different instead of criticizing them. So that was really the driving force behind getting into SEL and then social studies. And what's interesting about social studies is who are the people who are remembered in history? The unique disruptors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really powerful lesson for students to realize that yes, you can have peer pressure and feel like you need to fit into this box, but look what happens when you stand out and just be yourself. And showing students that I think is a really, really powerful message.
So give me an example of how that might look in a classroom or
Oh,
when you don't,
oh
because
yeah, I love it.
because you, that's an important lesson because you really, I mean, you can do it in every class, but I think the social studies is kind of made for that type of lessons.
It really is. And I think some of the work that I hope to do in the future is to continue to help remake social studies education because I think there's such um, a lens that we look at social studies education that you're just learning about facts and dates and people, and it's just a regurgitation of those facts. And I don't really see it like that. I think of the social in social studies and how we should learn how to talk and communicate and learn how to be engaged democratic citizens. So for me, and by the way, just because it'll make sense to your listeners, my kids call me Cray Cray Miss J.
Okay.
So I'm always doing something that's a little wacky to help them feel comfortable and to take risks that are safe in my classroom. But in a way, I had really started doing this even as a student teacher. It was almost before SEL was a thing. And I had one lesson where we were talking about the American Revolution. And I had just thrown out there, well, what if the British had communicated differently with the colonists? What if instead of demanding that they pay certain taxes, they had advertised it? And I had the students create advertisements of the Stamp Act and the Townsend Act. And we talked about how sometimes when we're trying to communicate a message, our message gets lost in the delivery of it.
And that is a lesson.
Yeah, and it really it's teaching social awareness. It's teaching relationship skills that we have to be aware of people other than ourselves when we're communicating. So it was starting even, and again, I didn't realize I was doing that years ago, but now today I do that with ancient history too. And one of my favorite lessons is I do a lesson on Hammurabi. And for your listeners, Hammurabi came up with an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Got to throw that in there. Um, and
Or else they'll have to take your class.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, you guys are all welcome. Come down to curriculum Genius class anytime you want. But we're talking about Hammurabi, and I kind of throw this challenge out to my students, and I say, middle school students love the Code of Hammurabi. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? This is an ancient code, Miss J. What is this? And I go, no, you guys love it. In fact, you do it all the time. What? What do you mean we do this all the time? And I say, let me give you a scenario. I'm walking down the hallway and I see one student push another. And I go over, oh no, like, why are you pushing another student? We don't do that. 99.99% of the time, that student turns, looks me dead in the eye and says, Miss J, they pushed me first. And then I can say to students, an eye for an eye and a push for a, and they all go push, and then they go, oh, you did it to us again. And it brings up this conversation of, oh, we do that. We're employing a law code from 5,000 years ago. Okay, boys and girls, then, well, how do we move forward from that? As middle schoolers, what is justice? What does that look like in the adult world? If somebody robs a house, do we go and rob that house back? No. We have a whole system of courts and judges, and it brings all of those civic lessons in, but then it also talks about this idea of justice. And it does break my heart when students say, well, hold on, Miss Shea. I am on social media and I see adults doing an eye for an eye all the time. People say nasty things to one person and they say it right back. So a lot of the social in this conversation is actually having that real world conversation and saying, well, then we have to be the change. We're not always going to see a perfect world, but we now have to look at this. We have to look at lessons in leadership and say, how am I going to be a better leader? How should our leaders be better leaders? And what is the mechanism to get us there where we're actually making substantial change?
I love that lesson, and I think that some adults should pay attention to that lesson.
They pick up everything.
But I think what you're also doing is you're making it relevant. I think one of the keys to teaching is, how am I ever going to use this?
Yes. I think I think what's a little bit unfortunate nowadays is that SEL and social studies, they're almost seen like a fad or a filler instead of foundational. The story of humanity is extremely important to our democracy. And it's amazing to me that we haven't spent more time talking about that because industry leaders have. When you look at Steve Jobs, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, you look at Fareed Zakaria from CNN, all of them are talking about the humanity, the psychology behind technology. Fareed Zakaria says in his book, A Defense of a Liberal Education, he says that you can build a sneaker for $30 in many parts of the world, but to sell that sneaker for $300 requires a story. So industry is actually talking about the story of humanity, how humans interact in their marketing and things like that. Yet in education, we're focusing on other things. It's not a priority.
Well, first of all, I like your take on social studies because I love social studies,
Yes, I'm a
but
fan.
I'm not a. I was bad at dates and those facts, but I was good about the
Mhm.
story,
Right.
the conflict, and the debate. It's usually a debate. I think the other lesson that the kids should learn though on that is who do you follow? If you see the leadership, if you see the adults going what you think is wrong, it's easy to fall into that trap.
Absolutely. So you're actually talking about resisting peer pressure, resisting something that feels easy. And that's a really big conversation if we're doing something on the Holocaust, for example. Do we follow something that feels easy or do we stand up and do what's right?
Mhm.
So there's so many stories we can attach to those lessons.
I have a lot of play. I have to cover a little bit more with you.
Absolutely.
But I just want to go back to social emotional learning because I think that is like a key for you.
Absolutely.
It's a cornerstone of so, but I think it's misunderstood by a lot of other people outside of education, and I think we have to do a kind of a better job of communicating the importance of it because to you, does it make? I think it makes everyone a better academic student too. It's not just about those soft things.
It is. And I think it's often misinterpreted as, well, we're going to talk about our feelings and we just have to be soft on kids, and it's framed in this way that as I have become more cognizant and more aligned with SEL, I've actually become a tougher teacher. I am more rigorous in my content. I have higher expectations for my students. um, just this week we're doing a lesson on this, on stereotypes, and we're talking about how hominins and cavemen are stereotyped as primitive, and we're looking at the evidence, and my students are writing paragraphs. I don't know if you know anything about middle school students. They do not like to revise paragraphs
Oh,
after they write them the first time. So I have them using some AI, bringing in those digital skills, but they're revising over and over. And I have to teach them self regulation skills. They get frustrated. I wrote it once, it's good enough. Or the AI is giving me feedback and I don't like the feedback. Okay, we have to learn how to sit in that frustration. That's okay. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to fail your first time. You don't get up to bat and hit a grand slam your first time at the plate. So we have to build in those skills of resiliency. And I think that that is something that's misinterpreted when it comes to SEL, that it's just let's be soft and talk about our feelings, not let's level up and have really high expectations, but help kids meet those
all
expectations.
kids.
All kids, all of them. Yep.
Just there's an editorial comment. So the other thing I do want to switch up a little bit is your experience was kind of a isolated experience in school,
Yes.
and no, I know you got the honors of being the county teacher of the year, and you may say I'm not even the best teacher in my building. Uh, it is I teaching and education is really a collaborative effort. So let's talk about your district a little bit and how supportive they have and have made you a better teacher.
It's amazing how isolated I felt in my K to 12 experiences, and that idea of collaboration that I felt at Carteret. And I cannot speak more highly of my district because I work with some of the best people. I really do. My coworkers are just incredible. I work with an amazing co-teacher who just goes above and beyond for all of her students. My department, my grade level, they're all so collaborative. And my administration, something we may not hear from a lot of teachers about administrators bringing in that collaboration. And when I was a really young teacher, I wasn't even tenured. A lot of my administrators, they knew that I wanted to get involved and they listened to that feedback and they said, okay. And they would reach out to me constantly and say, we want you to be part of the Chromebook pilot team. We want you to be part of this team, that team. And they really pushed me at kind of a young age of a teacher to be so involved. And I have to say, some of my best work has been sitting down with my administrators, having a conversation with multiple stakeholders, I could think specifically when I worked with the Connected Action roadmap. We sat down, my principal, my vice principal, and a team of teachers, and we talked about the honest climate in our school. And we collaboratively made changes and then presented those to the school and got feedback. And it was this whole cycle. And that's so amazing to have that opportunity to have experienced that. And now, as a county teacher, that's what I want to do. I want to bring that to other places because I think that that's something we often hear from teachers is that there's this disconnect between stakeholders. There's a disconnect between parents, between administration and teachers and students. And how do we bring all that together now and collaborate?
So teaching in education, I'm not just saying teacher. So it really is like, it's a team effort.
It is.
You can't have success unless your colleagues are kind of there with you.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
the administration, obviously, because they have to, starting from the superintendent's office, and even the board, everyone's supporting you. You at least feel that you're being supported.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be sitting here today without my colleagues and administrators and without that collaborative effort, I would have never succeeded in the way that I have.
So let's go macro a little bit. What do you see as we've been pretty macro, but what do you see as the challenge facing teachers and educators today?
I think we are in some ways battling an intentionality and assumption epidemic where we're so used to putting people in boxes and we're so used to immediately assuming other people's intentions. Um, and we're not digging deeper beyond the surface level. And that, well, those are the barriers really to true collaboration. We assume administration is doing one thing. Administration assumes teachers are doing one thing. There's not this really close collaboration. And I think that comes from a lack of building relationships within the staff and the building and the district. And if we're able to do that, we're really going to change how districts are operating. I know this summer I presented at the Climate and Culture Institute that the NJDOE put together, and it was amazing to have administrators and teachers in the same room. And we're having this presentation on how do we develop teacher leaders. But we have perspectives of both stakeholders sitting in the same room. How often do we have administrators and teachers taking the same professional development?
I don't know. You're in the building.
That's it never happens. And that's so amazing because now we're looking at things and we're saying we're going to build together something new. So I think we need to. I know for me, like one of my favorite books is The Anatomy of Peace. It changed my teaching because it talks about how sometimes we see people as objects rather than people, and it's going beyond the surface level into these deeper discussions and getting to know people as people. And I feel like that's how we combat some of this assumption and intentionality. We assume the worst, and I think we really need to spend more time trying to assume the best of each other and then try to bring that all together.
I'm going to now I'm going to put you on the spot.
Put me on the spot.
No, that's not a spot. We'll talk a little bit more about you in the sense when you got nominated to be teacher of the year in your district and then got county teacher of the year. How did it feel when you became county teacher? How did you react when you're like, wow?
Shocked. Shocked. Um, I think we all have that imposter syndrome of, I'm never doing enough. And that's unfortunate because this year has been such an amazing experience because I feel like I've been very validated in my work, which is amazing. This is the highlight of my career, but now I'm thinking, well, how do we validate others? Because should I have felt more validated before? It's brought up a lot of very interesting questions because of such a great positive experience. I wonder that my fellow educators, we sometimes doubt ourselves, like we're not doing enough for the kids. And I don't see that. I see so many educators going so above and beyond, but we don't necessarily believe it.
And we may not see it, they may not see it in themselves.
Yes,
They see
yes,
the 2 or 3 kids that maybe they feel they're not getting to.
yes.
So they don't see the 23 that they are reaching.
We're hard on ourselves. We grade ourselves the hardest. We definitely do.
And a lot of people may not know this. The county teachers, they get to know each other.
Yes.
And how's that experience? And is that helping you as a teacher now? Seeing I'm sure they're all inspirational to you. But what's that experience like, meeting other teachers that are going through the same thing, even though they're teaching totally different things?
Yeah, well, my 2025 cohort, I've obviously spent a ton of time with them this year, and they are the most outstanding, empathetic group of people I have ever met. I've never just met a group of people and felt so accepted. Some of them even said, they were like, at first you were kind of shy, and that's my background. I'm not sure when to, share, and I kind of tiptoe around that a little bit. But they were like, we're just so proud of you. You've just come out of your shell, and
I'm having a hard
you
time believing
guys.
that you were in the shell, but that's okay.
Well, I'm very animated in front of my students, but it's hard to sometimes build those stronger relationships with people that I don't already know, because I sometimes wait for the other shoe to drop. Like, when is someone going to use a vulnerability against me? And that's me assuming the negative. I have to focus on that daily, because I know I have this background of um, not being able to trust people, and people showing me that I can't trust them. So it's been so amazing to work with these just outstanding educators, and just to see that they really practice what they preach, where they say that they are inclusive and empathetic, and they really are. And then meeting, obviously, past state teachers of the year, past county teachers of the year, who have really become mentors because they've been through this process. And I'm actually going to be presenting, hopefully, with one of them at the NJEA convention coming up in November. So I'm watching these educators who have just done these outstanding things in their career, and I feel like they're just incredible mentors and leaders. And we're trying to build this coalition with NJCTY, which is the New Jersey County Teachers of the Year. So it's all of us, past, present, and we're really trying to change education in New Jersey. I truly believe, we know New Jersey is always one of the top ranked states for education. And post COVID, we said, we're going to reimagine education. It's unprecedented times. It's a new normal. Well, what are we doing to reimagine education? We can do it, but it's going to require us to take that risk, to be disruptors on all levels, from the state level all the way down. And I think if we take that leap, we go outside of the box just a little bit, I can't imagine why New Jersey wouldn't be leading a whole new era of education for our nation. I don't see why we couldn't do that. And I think it starts just by this collaboration, having these type of conversations. Without you reaching out, this podcast doesn't happen. Without you doing the work.
Well, but you started because I heard you speak. So I'm
But it takes
there.
everyone.
I know a good story when I see it. So that's kind of going to bring me to the end. We need more teachers, though. We're
Yes.
facing the teacher shortage. You're one of those people that probably in high school was, I'm not sure what I'm going to do in my life.
Mhm.
And teaching was not probably in the top 3 or 4. But how fulfilling has it been to become a teacher?
My job is never boring. I go in and I get to work with people every day. And it's the students, it's the colleagues, it's getting to bring a little bit of brightness to the world. And then I also get to get that brightness from other people. And it really is amazing. I get to teach about the story of humanity, and I get to teach about humanity to teach humanity. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, thanks, Kristen. It's been great having that conversation.
It's always
I'm
a
sure
pleasure
we'll have
talking to
another
you, Ray.
conversation down the road.
Absolutely.
Okay, that brings us to an end of this Education Matters. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the Middlesex County Teacher of the Year, Kristen Johnson from Carteret. And I think her insights are great into education. And so we'll see you at the next episode.